Ozonics Killerwinds podcast back again.
I'm Nick Simon.
I'm Cole Tanner. Here we go. Okay, first thing to address right off the bat, we're just going to get to it. If you're listening, sorry you can't see it, but thankfully you can't see it. Not on purpose. We're not wearing uniforms on the podcast, but Nick and I are wearing matching shirts.
Yeah, I called Cole last night. I said, hey, man, I feel like we should match tomorrow.
No.
And Cole said, all right, yeah, let's do that. And so now we're matching.
Yeah, we look ridiculous. I wanted to put on, I have a black Hawkeye shirt that I'm really into. That's a long sleeve, dry fit long sleeve. I was going to put that on, but Nick said, no, it looks funny. I think it looks stupid.
Just matching today.
Oh, yeah, nice shirt.
Yeah, nice shirt, man. Where'd you get it?
Mine's my Carhartt Force logo on the side is not even anything. It's not, there's no letters left.
This is a freshie, so.
You wore that to, you had a little social outing that you wore that to, didn't you?
Yeah, my cousin's grad party.
Hey, gotta look. We actually talked about it. You're like, hey, I need to look snazzy for the wedding. What should I wear? And I'm like, I'll tell you what, you can't beat a fresh Carhartt shirt, especially a fresh Force Carhartt shirt.
It's just a good, clean look.
Wicking moisture a bit.
Yep, it was.
And listen, if you get in a pinch, you got like a little pencil holder there that splits in the pocket.
Yeah, in case you ever need to write something down.
Then you got to put something in the pocket. I use the pocket all the time.
Yep. So.
I was actually using the pocket. I was wearing a Carhartt shirt the other night to the dirt track races, and I kept putting my headphones in my pant pocket. And I'm like, you know what? I got this pocket right here.
Put it right here.
Put it right there. Just had them nice and easy, just grabbing them.
Yeah.
You know what? Just for good measure. There you go.
Can I have the other one?
Got a highlighter in the old pocket. Now we're not matching, though. There you go. See?
Okay.
Now we're utilizing the pockets.
Now we're ready to pod, jot some stuff down.
So here's a problem with a pen, though. This is what I end up doing.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Pens become like a fidget thing for me. I start. Okay. So today we are talking about the North American Super Slam.
Yep.
We're gonna go all over the map here. So you better hang on.
Strap in, man.
Tighten the seatbelt.
Yep.
This is gonna get a little aggressive.
Yep.
Apologize in advance if we start really jumping all over the place.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy that this is something that we haven't really talked about yet.
You know, yeah, especially because you brought it up and I kind of poo-pooed it right off the bat. I'm like, what? Why would we talk about that? And then I'm like, you know what? That's actually a really good subject to talk about.
Yeah. Especially
because as we get into this, you'll find out and you'll learn that it actually means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. So let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think the best way to start is right here with this tattoo.
Okay.
I actually have a tattoo of a map of North America.
Okay.
And that map represents, for me, the North American Super Slam. That's what it really represents. I look at that every day. And I look at Alaska a lot because it's right there, kind of right where you see it. But that's really what the meaning behind that tattoo was the North American Super Slam. I got this when I was in my 20s.
Yeah. Nice.
And yeah, that's kind of what the meaning is behind it. People always ask, like, why do you have a map? Well, is that a map? I'm like, yeah, it's a map. And I'm like, why do you have that? I always say it's so I don't get lost.
There you go.
That's what I tell the kids. I'm like, oh, we're not lost. We're right there.
Yeah.
But that's the meaning behind it is the North American Super Slam.
Yeah.
I got pretty obsessed with the North American Super Slam in my early 20s. I got really, really into it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even really know how I came across it, but it just kind of happened.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm going to give you the history and the information that I know. If I'm not right, something's off, apologize in advance.
Yep.
That's my disclaimer. But the North American Super Slam represents the North American big game animals that are recognized by Pope and Young.
Yeah.
That's what it originally was, right? It used to be 28 animals. And before that, it was less than that, right? It was 28, and then it became 29 when Pope and Young recognized the Thule elk. That was the 29th animal.
Yeah.
Okay. Which there's some, I don't want to say controversy, but who knows? Maybe someday Pope and Young recognizes another animal, and now all of a
Right.
sudden, instead of being the North American Super Slam, it's 29 animals. Maybe it's 30.
30.
Could, for example, the wolf be
Right.
the 30th animal?
Yeah.
Right. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's a whole thing that we can get into about what animals are represented, which animals aren't, and we'll kind of get into that as we go.
Yeah.
But from my understanding, the North American Super Slam was originally the animals recognized by Pope and Young.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, Pope and Young is looking at it based on animals that are indigenous to North America. They weren't brought here.
Yeah.
They were already here. They were here.
Yeah.
Boom, they were indigenous to North America. Boom, there they are.
Yep.
And so, but also I think part of it is they're a huntable population, right? That can be recognized within their record books. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's part of it too, I think. I'm just speculating here. But so there's a bunch of different animals within the North American Super Slam. And I think that's the part that really interests me was all the different species, but really, and I've talked about this before, for me, everything is about adventure. I'm always looking for an adventure.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Scam likely. Unbelievable. Totally uninterrupted podcasts. I forgot to put it on mute. I'm sorry.
Boop, 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 boop.
Yep. That was a big flub there.
It's all right.
Yes. Not my first rodeo.
Learn from it. Learn
Yep.
from it.
Hey, once you get bucked off, I can jump back right back on.
Learn, adapt, and adjust.
Yep. So, the North American Super Slam always meant a lot to me for the fact that I was always looking for an adventure. And, you know, as I started getting more serious about hunting and just it really becoming my passion, I kind of knew pretty quickly that like whitetails wasn't enough.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with whitetails being enough for some people. It just wasn't enough for me. And I learned pretty quickly that I was like, you know, people would ask, you know, what do you got planned? What do you got coming up? What are you going to try to hunt? Like, what are you thinking? And for me, it was always the next one.
Yeah.
You know, like I saw the other day, they asked Tom Brady, which championship was your favorite? He said the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, I know that feeling. Not that I've won a Super Bowl, but meaning that the hunt that I'm excited about and the species that I'm excited about is the one that I haven't hunted yet.
Yeah, exactly.
The next one, right? That next one. That's kind of was always like my thing. And it really interests me, just the adventure of it all.
Yeah.
And then looking at what Art Young and Saxton Pope and Howard Hill and Fred Bear and Bob Swinehart, all these guys had done before I was even alive.
Right.
You know, not just, and again, all around the world, but for me, North America is what just really interests me.
Yeah.
Was where I was from, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, not that Africa isn't cool or Europe or Australia or South America or anywhere else in the world. For whatever reason, North America is just what really tripped my trigger.
Yeah.
Just the idea of like, wow, I could go all over North America to Alaska to California to all over Canada, all out west, all these unique places and hunt all these animals. It just really, I was hook, line, and sinker. And there's been a lot of people, not a lot as in like millions, but there's been people that have been very successful and hunted all 29 and killed all 29.
Right.
You know what I mean? And for me initially, I felt like that's really where it was, is I wanted to hunt them all. I wanted to harvest them all. You know what I mean? I had this grandiose vision of like a game room with all these animals in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I really started kind of planning life around that. I mean, it sounds really crazy to say, but I seriously was. I was like, okay, what do I got to do so I can shoot these 29 North American big game animals? I mean, I was like planning on it. You know what I mean? I mean, I was making life decisions around how do I do this? You know, sometimes the best laid plans, but that I think for me a bit changed, right? When I, you know, met my now wife, which was by far the best decision I ever made. You know what I mean? And and that's okay. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's life.
but some of the things that I thought that I was going to do initially, those have kind of changed and morphed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that, and it's okay. Like, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And so I think some of my goals and perspective on the 29 has changed, but my passion for it is still there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And we'll get into that as we go on more. But like you said, I think for me now, like I said, initially it was like, I want to hunt all of them. I want to kill all of them. You know what I mean? That was like, I was just so obsessed with that. Now I think for me, it's become more about where does it really fit into what I'm trying to do? And I'm still like, it's still a huge priority for me. But for me, it's become more about like what my super slam is animals that I've hunted animals that I've hunted myself, animals that I've had opportunity to guide, animals that I've also had an opportunity to film hunts on.
Right.
For me, those all count.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think as we talk about this discussion today, that's what I would really, I don't know if it's a challenge, or that's what I would just say, if you're listening to this, that's what I would take away from it. Make it your own, right? Do it for yourself. Do what you want to do. Don't feel like you have to impress anyone. You have to get over a certain bar for whatever reason from anything anybody's telling you. Just make it your own. Because from a lot of people's perspective, or organizations that are out there that keep track of these things, they may look at what I'm doing and go, well, that doesn't count in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Well, with all due respect, I don't really care what you think, right? Like, I don't really care. You know, like it's like I've said so many times, hunting is such a personal thing for me. But again, so some people look at it like, well, you didn't really hunt them all, and you didn't really kill them all. And then there's other people that would go, that look at it, well, it has to be a recordable animal, right? It has to meet a certain minimum.
Yeah.
Other people would say, well, it has to just be the species. If you're hunting Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep and you shoot a ewe, that's still technically a Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep.
Yeah.
Which I tend to agree with. You know what I mean? It's about the species. But for me, it's even less about it's about the species, but it's really about the hunt. It's about the adventure. It's just being out there, just hunting all these different things.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like all the trophies, like this studio we're in, all of a sudden there's electrical fire, it all burns down. It all just goes away. All you really have is you have the memory.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you can always have that. The physical stuff, it's just stuff. You know what I mean? So with that said, like you said, if you take anything away from this, figure out what works for you. And maybe your listeners are like, oh, I'm not interested in any of that. Okay, fine. But I think that for me, I wish I would have kind of had that perspective more early on. I think initially I was so like, I got to hunt them all. How am I going to do this all myself?
Yeah.
But again, some things, and like I said, I've had an opportunity and been blessed to get married and we have 5 beautiful kids. And so I've always really prioritized, you know what, I want to be a good dad more than anything else before I want to be a really good hunter.
Yeah.
I want my kids to always remember I was a good dad, not just a good hunter. And I'm not a good hunter either. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I want to be a good dad first. That's my main priority.
Yeah.
And hunting has taken a step back.
Yeah,
and I
for
feel
sure.
like I have to keep that priority list straight. If all of a sudden I put the Super Slam and hunting North America big game males above my family, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know, so that's just a choice for me. But with all that said, let's get into the 29. So I have a bunch of paperwork here so I can get some facts right, but I'm going to give you the list. Get out your pen, your pocket pen there. Let's see if I can name all 29. Probably can't. I'll try to do them in no specific order. Okay, let's go for bears first. Polar bear, brown bear, black bear, grizzly bear. Okay, we got the bears out of the way. Let's do sheep. Doll sheep, stone sheep, Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, desert sheep. Okay, that was another one. Now let's do deer. Whitetail deer, mule deer, Coues deer, Sitka blacktail, Columbia blacktail. Okay, now I'm at 13. Let's do moose. Alaska Yukon moose, Shiras moose, Canadian moose. Okay, Now let's do caribou. Barren ground caribou, central barren ground caribou, Quebec Labrador caribou, mountain caribou, woodland caribou. Now we're at 21. Now now it gets a little bit more obscure. I'm gonna go some of the random. Let's do bison, muskox. Okay, now I've still got 7 left. Antelope, mountain goat, mountain lion. Now I still have 3 left. I already said muskox and bison, right?
Yeah, it's super easy.
And I said antelope. And I'm forgetting a real obvious one.
Yeah, super obvious.
Okay, don't tell me.
I won't.
And I said the moose. Oh, Rocky Mountain elk, Thule elk, Roosevelt elk. Boom! 29.
You did have one little slip up. You said central barren ground. It's central Canadian.
Yeah, everybody says it different, but it's barren ground caribou, central barren ground caribou. Yeah.
Nice job, man.
Look at that. Okay, so now I'm going to say them again, and I'll say them a little bit faster so we can get them all in, all right? Just how these are listed in this order here. Stone sheep, Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep, desert bighorn sheep, Dall sheep, pronghorn antelope, mountain goat, muskox, bison, Shiras moose, Canadian moose, Alaska Yukon moose, woodland caribou, Quebec Labrador caribou, mountain caribou, central Canadian barren ground caribou, Thule elk, Roosevelt elk, Rocky Mountain elk, whitetail deer, Sitka blacktail deer, mule deer, Coues deer, Columbia blacktail deer, mountain lion, polar bear, grizzly bear, black bear, Alaska brown bear.
There we go.
And I didn't say Alaska, just say brown bear.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't need to put the Alaska in there. So that's all of them. That's 29.
29.
Yep.
29
Yep.
North American
Big game animals.
big game species.
Yep. And like you said, I say this in a non-braggadocious way. I've had the opportunity between hunts that I've hunted myself, guided hunts that I've guided on, and videoed hunts that I videoed on. The hunts I've been a part of 16 of the 29.
Nice.
Yep. And I would have 17. I had a muskox trip. I was literally in the airport.
Booked and planned.
No, I was in the airport. I was through the terminal. I had already checked my bag, going to Greenland, and COVID. We were right in the middle of COVID, and
Brutal.
Denmark stopped big game hunting in Greenland the day that I was leaving.
Brutal.
Within an hour of jumping on the flight. You want to talk about a gut punch.
Yeah, no kidding.
That was terrible, especially because Ozonics was sending a cameraman. We were bringing my buddy Zach, and he was going to come and film the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was just flights and flying across it was bad. So I would have 17 in there. And there'll be some more that I hope get to check off over the years here. But so there's 29 North American big game animals. And there's a whole pile of them.
Yeah. So out of these 29, obviously whitetail's pretty attainable. I'd say antelope are pretty attainable. Elk. What's one of kind of the more what's one of these 29 that would be pretty attainable, but you don't think it is, if that makes sense? Because like for me, like I would think muskox would be hard, but I mean, you had it dialed in, you were going to go do it. Was that a hard thing to kind of line out? Just because it seems kind of, obviously it's different than a whitetail deer, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. So I'm sorry, and I apologize in advance for this whole podcast because I'm not going to be able to give short answers, I don't think, on a lot of these things. Mm-hmm. The first thing I would say to that question is, what's attainable? I think that a lot of these animals and a lot of these hunts, it's kind of like construction, right? I'm remodeling a house. So many people have walked into that house and like, man, how do you know how to do that? How'd you figure that out? And the reality is I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But guess what? I just figure out the first step.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I get done with the first step, and then I figure out the next step.
Right.
And then I figure out the next step. Perfect example. You did this, you did that this last weekend. and it doesn't matter come from me, but I was really proud of you when I saw that. I was like, look at you. If you asked me a month ago, anytime, hey, you think I can build a table? I'm like, nope. You know what I mean? Like, just like, can I go out and shoot a under par round of golf? Nope. But all of a sudden you're like, hey, I need to build a table. So what'd you do? You don't know how to technically build a table.
Yeah.
But you know how to Google it. That's first step. Okay, let's look on the internet, try to find a plan.
Yeah.
Okay, now I found the plan. Now what do I need to do? Okay, well, I guess now I need to go make a supply list. Okay, did that. Now what do I need to do? Well, I guess I go drive to Home Depot.
Yeah.
Menards, Lowe's, wherever you go. I guess I need to go buy a bunch of stuff. Okay, now what do I do? Well, I got to lay it all out and start watching the video or reading the instructions. And all of a sudden, half a day later, for me, it'd probably be long because I'm too particular. Boom, you got a table.
Nice table.
And people have walked up to you and like, man, that's a nice table. How'd you end up doing that? And you're like, man, I don't really know.
Yeah.
You just did it.
Yeah,
you just
exactly.
And that's what I think. I can't tell you how many of some of these animals that I've hunted in some places where the people are like, man, how'd you pull that off? You went where? Mm-hmm. How'd you do that? Man, I don't know, dude. I just started figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Like some of these are not as realistic. And I think that's the other part about it too. As a young person in my 20s, I was like, I'm going to hunt them all. And here we go. Do a Google search on how much polar bear hunts are.
Yeah,
Do a Google search on how much stone sheep hunts are.
Yeah.
Do a Google search on how much desert bighorn sheep hunts are.
Yeah.
Okay. Tule elk hunts. You wouldn't think of Tule elk. Tule elk hunts. Just a lot of those hunts in general, they're incredibly expensive. And a lot of them, logistically, you can't just hunt by yourself.
Yeah.
So now I kind of have a different perspective. Like, man, I'm not a multimillionaire. So, some of that stuff is just financially probably out of reach.
So you would say that for sure price is the biggest barrier in getting the 29.
Well, that's a hard answer. That's a hard thing to answer too, because I would say yes, but I would also say no. It comes back to you have to figure it out. There's guys that have shot the 29 that are not wealthy people.
Right.
What it comes down to is if you really want to make that a priority, I mean, I know of guys that are doing it or have done it or are doing it right now that like they would see the way we live our lives and they'd be like, oh yeah, dude, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Meaning they would drink water all day long. They would never go out to eat. Mm-hmm. They don't go out and go golfing randomly just because they want to have a fun afternoon, evening after work.
Yeah.
They're not buying anything. They prioritize these types of things. It's like the saying goes, if you're like, live like nobody else for a year so you can live like nobody else the rest of your life, that's how you attain these things.
Right.
If you really want to do it, then you have to prioritize that.
Yeah.
You know what is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it's just like on Instagram. How many times have you seen those little boxes that people, how to save $10,000?
Yeah.
Just like I said earlier, you don't do it all at once. You do it one step at a time, one choice at a time.
Yeah.
Like I know guys that are doing this or are working on it that are outfitters. There's ways, and if you're not an outfitter, become an outfitter, become a guide, figure out how to do it. All of a sudden, you could trade hunts, you can work out deals.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I think there's a lot of that happens on some of these animals, but still, some of them, like it's a supply and a demand type thing.
Yeah.
There is such a demand, but there's only so much supply of them. You follow me? Mm-hmm. And so what the value of something is or the market for something isn't what somebody says the price is.
Yeah.
It's what somebody's willing to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly.
That is these hunts.
Yeah.
Right? That's why stone sheep hunts are going anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 now.
Yeah.
Because people are willing to pay that.
Yeah.
You follow?
Yep.
And so, but with that said, I tend to feel like some of these are unattainable for me because of price.
Yeah.
Right. But I think generally for everybody, is that the case? No, because it's really, it's out of range for me because of like the fact that the North American Super Slam is not my main priority.
Yeah.
I'm not living every day thinking, how do I save money to go do a polar bear hunt?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how do I pay for braces for my 11-year-old?
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
No doubt.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, we need a new oven, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, like, so that's the types of things that like my mind's thinking about. But I think that price doesn't have to be the barrier if you're willing to make sacrifices in your life to make things happen.
Yeah. Right.
You know, does that make sense?
Yep. No doubt.
So, but to get back to your original question, I think a lot of these are more attainable than you think. You just have to be willing to take the first step and then take another step and another step. The one that I would say to answer your question from my perspective, and in this you could get 100 different answers, the one that's more attainable that people just would not think, hands down, Alaska Yukon moose.
Yeah.
I think the Alaska Yukon moose is now the new Rocky Mountain elk.
Okay.
Meaning, you made a comment in that question, oh, you know, Rocky Mountain elk pretty doable. Well, it's doable, but guess what? Now there's the barrier. Where do you go over the counter in the Western states?
Yeah, exactly.
Not Colorado,
Yep.
not Idaho,
Yeah.
right? Those were the last couple left. You're not going just like, you're not like, you know what? Let's jump in the truck. Let's plan it for a few months and let's go to Colorado. That ain't happening.
Yeah.
You got to go through the process.
Right.
But guess where you can still do that? Alaska.
Yeah.
Again, it's a lot of just logistic planning, but you can go get a tag is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You can plan a trip and you can go to Alaska and you can go to the counter or you can buy it online and you can get a moose tag. You can go get a moose tag.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Now, financially, and the other part about that too is you can do a moose hunt unguided. In Alaska, there's some of the animals that you have to have a guide.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yep.
Grizzly bear, brown bear, mountain goat, Dall sheep. You got to have a guide.
Yeah.
But moose, you don't have to have a guide.
Yeah.
You could just go moose hunting.
Right.
Do you follow me?
Yep.
So I think the one that people kind of overlook to go do will be an Alaska Yukon moose hunt. The tricky part about that is you got to be careful. It's Alaska. It's a big wild place.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the West, I feel like, on steroids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's parts of the West that can be kind of dangerous too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the fact that you're not the apex predator.
Right.
You know, and you know, you can die. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
You know, so but yeah, I would say moose. I would look at a moose.
Yeah.
Has its inherent challenges, but you could get to Alaska and you could, if you wanted to do it, you know, the real cheap, logistically easiest way possible, you can drive to Alaska, you can fly to Alaska, you can rent a truck, you can drive up a road and find public land and just walk off the road and get far enough away and go hunting.
Yeah,
Does
exactly.
that make sense?
Yep.
Like, that's the way the West used to be with elk hunting. That's the way I cut my teeth as a teenager, right?
Yeah.
Like, and as a young 20-year-old man, that's what my brother-in-law and I, you know, that's what we did. We just, hey man, let's just jump in the truck. We didn't know what we were doing.
Right.
We didn't know nothing. But we knew you could go to Colorado, you could buy a tag, and you could hike up the mountains and go hunt elk.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
And so I think you could still go do that if you want to go on an Alaska Yukon moose hunt. That's one I would say.
Yeah.
The other one, and maybe this fits the bill. I think this is a really close second that I think sometimes people kind of overlook is a black bear hunt.
Yeah, exactly.
God, black bear hunt is just like really, there's black bears all over the place. You can go all across the Canadas every spring and every fall, you know, in certain places.
Yeah.
There's black bears scattered across the U.S. as well, you know. Now, again, you're probably going to, if you go out west for a black bear, you could do an unguided hunt. If you go to the Canadas, you're probably going to be on a guided hunt. But that's okay, dude. Those guided hunts aren't breaking the bank.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say a black bear is another one that if you're looking for something like, oh, I want to go on a guided hunt, I would try to go on a black bear hunt.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
All things considered, which one do you think is the toughest?
the toughest in what way?
All things considered.
All things considered. Oh,
Yeah.
you said it. Kyle, you said all things considered.
Yeah. Price could be kind of the physical aspect. You know, just not a lot of supply for it, like you were saying earlier.
I mean, the hardest thing about that question is like, I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
Right. And I've only hunted 16 to 29. So that would probably be a better question for a guy that's hunted all 29 that has more of a perspective
Yeah.
on like, I've been on all of them.
Yeah.
I've read a lot. I've watched a lot. I've read a lot more. I've had a lot of conversation about all of them. But yeah, so I'm going to give you my perspective on that answer. Mm-hmm. The hardest one all around. Oh man, that's a really good question. I mean, I feel like I would lean towards desert bighorn sheep.
Really?
Yep. Just because, especially if you do like a desert bighorn in like Mexico.
Yeah.
There's desert bighorns across the western states too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like a desert bighorn is in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, first off, I think logistically where that gets tricky is that on a desert bighorn sheep hunt and they're in areas where there's just not a ton of water, that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
How are you getting water? Mm-hmm. You carrying water? You know what I mean? Like you hear guys that go on these desert bighorn sheep hunts in Mexico and they have people that go along and just carry water.
Yeah.
Do you follow me?
Yep.
The desert has lots of things that will poke you.
Yeah.
I'll never forget like the first time I drove into Southern Colorado, started, guiding and helping with antelope hunts in the summer. And there's yucca and cholla and all this cactus there. And man, like you learn real quick. Like you be careful when you just kneel down on the ground.
Yeah,
you get a cactus in your knee and you're like, oh yeah, that felt great.
Yeah.
You run into something, all of a sudden you're cutting up your arms and
yeah.
your hands. And so that's the other challenge too, is there's just a lot of stuff that'll poke you there.
Mm-hmm.
But water is a real trick. And those desert bighorns, man, they can be in, it's not like it's the Rocky Mountains that are like thousands and thousands of feet high. But if you fall off a 30-foot cliff anywhere, that ain't good. And they're in just really, really gnarly country.
Yeah.
The other part about that is financially, those desert bighorn sheep hunts are spendy.
Yeah.
They are spendy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of the animals on here financially, like I said earlier, desert bighorn, stone sheep, polar bear. Those ones are getting to be financially, those three big ones right there are financially just way out of reach. Tule elk isn't far behind.
Yeah.
What guys are getting for brown bear hunts now, right. I would love to go to Kodiak, and those hunts, they're priced what they are.
Yeah.
I don't say it to complain.
No,
it is what it is. Just that's what people are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think between logistically with water, the country that they live in, and just and from what I understand, from what I hear, they are just skitty as all get out. You know what I mean? They're a sheep, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so, and then just financially, the financial investment to go on something like that, baby.
Yeah. And I would assume that and this is, actually, no, I was going to say that if there was one that you wanted to actually harvest, but I'm going to take that part out and just say, if there was one that you wanted to hunt that you haven't yet, which would it be?
Brown bear.
Brown bear?
Yeah. Brown bear, 100% brown bear.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, once I started having kids and my perspective on the slam kind of changed.
Yeah.
I feel like the thing that I don't know what it is. I think I know what it is. I'm a religious guy. I think, there's the Holy Spirit, right? Like, I think I have a voice in my head that every once in a while something comes up and I'm like, well, that's not me. That's not my voice. Like, what voice is that?
Yeah.
And that voice a long time ago told me sheep and a brown bear. I don't know.
There you go.
I don't know. So yeah, I'm really gung ho on the sheep, and I've been really really lucky to have the opportunity to do this doll sheep thing. And I'm just loving that.
Yeah.
But the other one, the one that would be right up there, be a brown bear.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
I just think something about them and the fact that like they're so big, a Kodiak brown bear. Oh man. And I've seen them myself. You know, when I hunted, I had an opportunity to hunt Kodiak out in the south end for Sitka blacktail and caribou there.
Yeah.
And to see them and to see how big they are. And I've told this story before, but when I was preparing to go to Kodiak again, just trying to be as ready as I could be, everybody said, yeah, man, when you see a brown bear, you feel like you're looking at a truck. And I was like, okay. I'm like, gosh, that's bizarre. Like a truck, like looking at a truck, you know, I'm like, what do you mean by that? So here we're on this lake, and my brother-in-law and I, we decided to go different directions, which now looking back on that, I don't know if that was the smartest idea. Like this is before inReaches, right? This is before GPS communication. This was us just going, okay, you're going to go that way. I'll go that way. We'll meet back here today or tomorrow, you know, type thing. I was like, so way in over our heads. And I didn't know anything. So here I am, go down this lake, and then I walk, and there's all this alder brush and all this just jungle, you know, everything you're trying to get through to get up on these ridges. So I'm cutting my way through it and getting my way through it. And, you know, every once in a while you get that like hair on the back of your neck kind of feeling. And I'm walking through it, and I get up and I start to get a little higher, and I get up on the ridge. I'm walking up, and finally I get a little tired. I'm like, I'm going to stop, have a drink of water, eat a snack or something. I sit down, I'm rubbing into my pack, and I'm like, grab my food, and I look back down the way that I walked up, and dude, you could see kind of where I walked, where I kind of moved the grass and stuff, you know, like you saw where I kind of zigzagged up through. Right where I had walked, here there's a brown bear just walking, like sniffing along exactly where I walked. And the minute I looked at him, I literally was like, holy crap, that thing looks like a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, it scared the daylights out of me.
I bet.
Well, the worst part is I had to go back down. I had to go back down.
Yeah.
So then instantly your mind, first I'm like, well, I'm not going that way. You know what I mean? I'm going to go over here. Well, I don't know what's over there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's like, and he's in there. I don't want to go there either. So it's like, it's this, it was just a helpless feeling of like, holy crap. Like I feel really afraid.
Yeah, exactly.
And that feeling for me is kind of intoxicating.
Yeah.
It's almost like I was just watching an ESPN thing last night, a 30 for 30 about the Detroit Pistons, and Isaiah Thomas, he goes, when you know they won the championship in like 1989, he's like, oh man, when we won, and he goes, the feeling of knowing that we were the best, there was no one better than us. He's like, it's an intoxicating feeling. It's just such a euphoric feeling. And I kind of feel that way when I get a little afraid.
Yeah.
I don't feel afraid very often.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like like I don't feel afraid when I'm in Iowa.
No. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I feel pretty in control.
Yeah.
I did not feel in control. And there's something about that that's just like, okay, I really like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, and it's not that I still wasn't afraid, but it's just something about that I'm like, man, I kind of like that feeling, just a skoshie.
Yeah.
That like, I haven't felt this a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt.
So yeah, there's something about all of that I think really leads me. I'd love to try to have an opportunity to hunt a brown bear.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other part about that too is I think, you know, I have a friend that I've worked with in Alaska that gets to go down there or he guides for brown bear hunts, and he sent me pictures and some of the pictures of like their paws, and even just when you see tracks and you can put your hand like in it, you know, it's like, golly,
different animal.
Oh, it's just insane. I mean, they're just so big, and yeah, there's just something about brown bears. I would love to have an opportunity to do that.
For sure. For sure.
So the other part about this, and one of the things I had kind of mentioned earlier, was about making the Super Slam your own. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what's been really unique about probably the last, because it's 2025, let's say the last 15 years or whatever, there's been organizations that are out there that have kind of created these other types of things, right? There's a thing called the Big Ten, which basically there's all these different categories of animals, right? You've got the sheep, you got the moose, you got the deer, you got the mountain lion, you got a mountain goat, you got the pronghorn. There's basically 10 categories. The idea is that you harvest one from each category.
Okay.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Again, something that's maybe a bit more attainable, right?
Right.
Or it's a great way to kind of start knocking them off the list.
Yeah, exactly.
There's also what guys are calling like the Super 25, which is one of each of the 10 plus another 15,
Right.
because again, some of them, polar bear, some of the sheep, get financially unattainable for guys.
Right.
They're like, like, how am I ever going to do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but the other thing that I would say is, and this is a part where my disclaimer is I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody.
Yeah.
Any of these organizations or whatever. And I'm sorry if this comes off in the wrong way. That's not what I'm trying to do, because I think everybody, what they're doing is really important. I think it's awesome. And I think, like I've said before, we all need to try to stick together and support each other. But the interesting thing is there's other animals that are out there.
Right.
There's other big game animals
That you can still go hunt.
in North America that aren't recognized in the Big Ten, Super 25, North American Super Science, Grand Slam of Sheep, right? All these different things. There's other animals out there, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, are they indigenous to North America? No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's also things that if you're wanting to try to do something unique and you don't want to have to travel halfway around the world, you could do some of this stuff here.
Yeah.
Right? For example, let's start with the sheep, for example. Obviously you think of Dall sheep, stone sheep, Rocky Mountain bighorn, desert bighorn sheep. Those are the 4 main sheep that guys would consider in the Grand Slam, that consider part of the North American Super Slam. But one of the things that would be really fun thing to do is aoudad hunting.
Right.
Okay, aoudad, they're actually called Barbary sheep. They're indigenous to North Africa, which is kind of neat, which is kind of wild. But they've been transplanted in Texas. They've been transplanted in New Mexico.
Yep.
There's free-ranging aoudad in both of those places.
Yeah.
And they're an absolute heck of a trophy and a pretty wild hunt. You can get into parts of New Mexico that you don't feel like you're in New Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
And they get in those deep canyons a lot like desert bighorn sheep hunt, and it can get tricky.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They've got amazing eyesight. They're super skitty. They're still a sheep.
Yeah.
They have big, cool, sweeping horns and long hair on their arms and their chest. They're pretty killer looking.
Yeah, for sure.
I've had an opportunity to video an aoudad hunt.
Yeah.
They are no slouch. They really aren't. They are really something else. So yeah, that's a thing that would be, and again, it's kind of cool. Like they're a pretty cool animal.
Yeah.
So if you're wanting to try to do a sheep hunt, that's a good place to start. Hey, I want to try to figure out if this is something that I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
Because sheep hunting, it's different. It's steep, it's challenging, it's tiring. It will just grind you into the ground.
Yeah.
And so not that aoudad hunts aren't hard, but it's a great way to say, is this what I want to do? Am I cut out for this?
Yeah.
I think some guys go on hunts like that, like, I ain't never doing that again.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sheep, nope, I'm good. I don't like heights. I don't like steep. That's not for me.
Right.
Well, that's a good way to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you the other one that's pretty bizarre that's down there in that New Mexico area is ibex.
Right.
There's Persian ibex in New Mexico. Free ranging ibex there.
Yep.
Didn't we watch a hunt? Didn't we watch a Steve Ranella hunt on Meat Eater?
Can't remember.
I think we did when we were in Harrisburg. I thought he had a hunt on his videos that he did a ibex hunt.
Was it ibex or aoudad? It was one of the two.
Yeah, maybe he did both. Well, and another one we're going to talk about, which you have some experience with.
Yeah.
But yeah, go to New Mexico and do an ibex hunt.
Yeah.
You want to talk about an animal that's skinny? those Persian ibex are from Iran.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think they were, from what I remember in my facts, I think they were brought over here in like the 1970s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not long ago.
Let me get that fact right. I actually have a buddy that's from New Mexico that has hunted ibex. He's gone out hunting. He's hunting them with his boy too.
Yeah.
You want to talk about one of the most ultimate bow hunts ever? Dude, go to New Mexico and try to kill an
uptight on
an ibex with a bow and arrow.
Yeah, that's wild to think about.
Dude, they're hard to get close to with a rifle.
Yeah.
They're hard to get close to with a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's close the gap to bow range.
Yeah.
What? 60, 80 and under?
Mm-hmm.
Holy crapper on a cracker. No way, Jose Consuargo. That ain't happening.
Yeah.
And guys go out there and do it. Men and women go out there and do it. I've heard it and seen it, and I'm like, man, I gotta shake your hand.
Yeah,
I'm
no
like,
kidding.
that is something.
Oh, yeah.
But that's in New Mexico.
Right.
It's right there. I think a lot of people, there's ibex in the U.S. Heck yes, there is.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, it's crazy.
I'll tell you what. The other one to mention right off the bat is one that you actually have more experience with than I do, hands down. Nilgai.
Yeah.
Nilgai in Texas.
Crazy animal.
Yes.
It's interesting to see them. They're like, it's just weird to explain. They're just like
Largest antelope
Yep.
of Asia.
Mm-hmm.
From Asia.
Yeah. Yeah, they're interesting animals. They're like, I don't even know how to explain it. They're just like, they're kind of like stoic, like just the way they walk around and stuff.
And their eyesight.
Yeah, it's
oh,
just,
baby.
it's really interesting to watch just to like actually see them. But yeah, no, it's kind of cool. It's cool to say that I was able to, experience that for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, those Nilgai, man, they are really something.
Oh, yeah.
And they're
skitty.
Oh, they do not put up with nothing.
But when because come walking in, it's just like, it seems like they just move in slow motion. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I'll tell you what, if you want to watch a really cool, Nilgai hunt, Steve Ranella, again, we're just kind of so happen to maybe mentioning him.
Or on ozonyxhunting.com.
Yes, and well, that's what I was just going to say
on
next.
YouTube.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say next. Like you said, there's an awesome hunt that Steve Ranella did. We were actually watching that in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
And if you want to watch Scott and Buddy, they were there, and actually Nick filmed it.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, they're really something else.
Yeah, they're cool. They're really cool.
And there's a
animals.
heck of a population down there.
Yeah.
They were down on the King Ranch,
Yep.
which is just a magical place. They actually have a really cool website with some really cool information that you can just read about how they've just flourished there.
Yeah, and supposedly too, the Nilgai, the meat off them is supposedly really, really good.
Yeah.
We didn't get a chance to try any, but I've heard that it's like really coveted.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
kind of cool.
Yeah, like you said, all my information on Nilgai just kind of comes from secondhand. Like you said, I've known people that have done it, and then like I said, Scott and Buddy.
Yeah.
And again, if you're a guy listening to this from Texas, like you're kind of nodding your head like, yeah, we know all about Nilgai. That's something that those guys really take pretty seriously down there.
Dude, I didn't even know what a Nilgai was.
Yeah, or how to say it, right?
Yeah,
a lot of
I
guys
was
like,
like-
how do you say it?
It's like, what are we going hunting? Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it was a cool experience for sure. And actually going back at the end of the month.
Yes, you are. I
So-
completely forgot about that.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that's, yeah, absolutely. It's just, it's actually not too far away. like less than a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question that I was just thinking about. I know that I know how I think about this, but I'm curious to see what you say. Do you ever think of a turkey as a big game animal?
Well, so that was part of what I was going to say with what we were just talking about, in the fact that I don't mean to try to throw shade on any organization.
Yeah.
But part of me wishes there was a organization where I get that there's all these groups. There's Pope and Young, there's Boone and Crockett, there's Grand Slam Ovis, and there's all these organizations like Wild Sheep and Pheasants Forever and NWTF and Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and Mule Deer Foundation or Whitetails Unlimited, like Ducks Unlimited. I'm not even mentioning all of them. There's a lot of them out there. And I'm really like happy that there's that many, because I think they all help try to support and financially raise money and support hunting and public land and just this sport that we're all passionate about.
Yeah.
But sometimes I wish there was just one. I wish there was an organization where everything was included.
Yeah.
Right. It was, if you grow it, you get it. Gross only.
Yeah.
Right. I wish it was all North American big game animals that are recognized by Pope and Young. I wish it was all these other animals that we're talking about that are in North America. I wish it was turkeys. I wish it was predators.
Yeah.
I wish it was pigs.
Yeah.
Think about pigs. Think about how there's pigs all across the southern half of the U.S.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and maybe there is an organization that scores pigs, but I wish there was just something that was encompassing all of it.
Mm-hmm.
If Jet went out during the fall, during rabbit season, and kills a rabbit, like there was a way that you could, like, not even if it's even scoring the rabbit, but you could put it in the record book.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you follow me?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
And I wish there was a way to do that with turkeys too.
Right.
You know, I feel like, and again, I'm just standing on my soapbox and I'm just being honest. And I keep saying this. I'm not trying to throw shade. If it comes off that way, I'm sorry. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I feel like you and I are in the same generation. We're kind of on we're a little bit off of far. I'm a millennial. You're a what? Something else. Something Gen Z, Gen Y.
Gen X, maybe?
Gen X, something.
I seriously don't know.
I don't know either. But you're what, 15 years younger than me? 14 years? Yeah.
How old are you?
40.
27.
Okay, 13.
13.
Right? Yeah, okay. So when I was graduating high school, you were born. Whew.
No. You didn't graduate high school when you were 13.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't make sense.
When you were going into high school.
I was thinking 13 grades.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, you were a little kid.
Yeah, just a little chopper yet.
Yeah, okay. You were still in diapers. Let's just say it that way.
Yes.
Okay. No, but what I'm saying is our dads, our grandpas, right? They grew up with all these like record books, right? Mm-hmm. Pope and Young, I think, to the generation, older than me, Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett and things like that, that was really important.
Yeah.
Getting in the book meant something. When you said that, you knew what that meant.
Yeah.
But now, for I think our generation, that reverence and that like want to do that has gone away.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you follow me?
For sure has. Which
is kind of a scary proposition, because I think when you lose that, what ends up happening is all of a sudden there's less members.
Right.
Well, all of a sudden when there's less members and there's less entries, less members means less people to help try to fundraise, which means less support, which means all of a sudden when things go the wrong direction, everybody goes, well, what's happening? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, could part of it be because, at the beginning, way over here at the foundation, because ask me how many animals I have in Pope and Young. 0.
Yeah.
How many do you have?
0.
How many people do you know that are like adamant about that they like are in, I got this in Pope and Young?
I wouldn't say adamant, but I know a bunch of people that have, put it in and got it actually scored.
Right. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's just like not much of a priority.
No, definitely not. I wonder why. What do you think it is?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I just think it's a process of just our culture has changed. I think part of it is the fact that like,
I think it's honestly almost kind of like social media. I think back in the day, people got the plaque and entered it because it was like a form of, I guess I don't know how I want to say it, but
like recognition.
Yeah, a form of recognition. Whereas now you can post it on Instagram and you get people commenting, "Hey, congratulations, that's awesome," but yada yada yada. I almost wonder if that's kind of a reason behind it.
Yeah,
not being as popular.
That's kind of that's right where I was going with it, and the fact that like when those things were in their heyday, it felt like what was really popular, magazines,
exactly,
all that stuff was the way it was, right?
Yep.
And that was kind of the way people communicated, right? They got it in the book. People got the book. They looked and read through the book and saw where their animal ranked.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The other thing you could say, maybe there's truth in this, maybe there's not. The longer you keep a record, the harder it is to get to the top of the record.
True. Yeah.
You follow?
Yeah. So people might be like, "Oh,
you know
what's
what I'm
the
saying?
point?"
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because number 10 in 1975 and number 10 now probably
could be 30.
Yes, you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It gets harder to go to the top of the
sure.
rank, which that's not a knock on all. Congratulations for the people that are at the top.
Yeah.
And that's when I think you do see like what's in North American whitetail when there are these whitetails out there that do score so high. Mm-hmm. But see, even that's the other part about it too. I think that's part of the equation. When you see something in North American whitetail, again, I like to read North American whitetail. I have a journalism degree, right? I enjoy all that type of stuff. What I always hear them say is Iowa #1, Wisconsin #1, right? Sometimes they talk about a new, typical world record, but a lot of times it's about like the state that it falls into.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the way we all talk about it too.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, if I ask you right now, like, what's the Iowa typical record? You probably know. If I said, hey, where does that rank in Pope and Young? You have no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
You follow me?
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of part of it too, right? Mm-hmm. And to your point, I think social media and technology and just the day and age that we live in, it's just changed for whatever reason. Yeah. It's funny because I don't think it's a good change.
No,
I wish it would go back.
Yeah.
But it's funny because like I say that and it's pretty hypocritical what I'm saying because I'm part of the problem, right? I'm not a part of it. I'm not a member. I don't put stuff in. Mm-hmm. And again, I haven't shot a buck I'm trying to shoot a really, really good buck. So a 130 is not like a buck that I'm going to let that walk by.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's where I come back to. I feel like I wish there was something that was encompassing all and could get the younger generation interested in it again.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that too is like you kind of hit on this earlier, but no minimum too. I think that would get way more people involved because for all I care, I've got 5 Pope and Youngs and 5 Booners on the wall right now.
Exactly.
That's what they feel like to me.
Well, and I think sometimes and again, this is getting way off into the weeds here, but what have we all gone through, right? When I was a kid, and again, just the way it was. When I was a kid, when I played baseball, somebody won and somebody lost.
Yeah.
The winner got a trophy, the loser got nothing.
Yeah.
That was how it was. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember losing baseball games and we had this thing they still have now, run, punt, and pass. You got first, second, or third. And if you didn't get first, second, or third, guess what? You were just the best of rest, but nobody cared.
Yeah.
And I remember as a little kid getting 4th and getting 5th. And I'm like, I ain't doing that again. And then one year I got 1st and I was like, heck yeah. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But now, like, everybody gets a medal.
Yeah.
Everybody wins.
Yeah.
And so I think what I'm saying is like with all these record books, part of it was you were either in or you were out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now we don't live in that type of a culture.
Yeah.
It's everybody's in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think over the course of time, that kind of off-put people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What if you were short by an 1/8?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, bro.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Is that what you want hunting to become?
Right? Like,
should the hunting really just only be based on the score?
Well,
no, I don't think so.
Well, and 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
100% agree with you. And sometimes I think all these organizations are like churches. What does everybody do? They go to church and then they're like, well, I don't like the people there or whatever. I don't like the music, so I'm going to go to the next church. Well, guess what? The next church is made up a bunch of people that are sinners like the last church and hypocritical because we're all human beings.
Yeah, exactly.
And these organizations are no different. Like if you don't like something and then you go to the next one, you're going to find things that are flawed about that one too because it's just made up of people and none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
And none of the organizations are perfect.
Right.
Right. But to your point as well, that's, I think, part of what, like, and again, a long, long time ago, I think I wasn't even 20. We live in North Iowa, okay? Clear Lake, Iowa. Mesa City, our office is Mesa City. Chatfield, Minnesota, south of Rochester, is where the Pope and Young Museum is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I always knew it was there. When I started getting really into the North American Super Slam, like really, really into it, I drove up there just one random day. Just drove up there one random day of the week. And I was like, I'm going to look at this place. And it is really something to see.
Yeah.
They've got this incredible broadhead collection. They've got all these mounts. It's really something to look at the history. I was really, really interested in Saxton Pope and Art Young and some of the hunting that they did and how they learned to bow hunt and all of that stuff. And Ishii and all that was just like, whoa. Like that was like, I was like, like it makes me want to swear because those guys were genuine badasses, right? Like they were.
Yeah.
Like bleep it out.
Yeah.
They were genuine badasses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, in their day, like those guys were just killers. You're like, whoa, And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I have pictures of them in my office. Like I look at them every day. Like they're right there. So I went up there and I was looking around and I was just like enamored. So as I'm walking around this museum, and they've got the record books there, you know what I mean? And I made a comment just like asking, you know what I mean? And this is kind of part of what like my problem is with it is to me, it's like not all just about the score, you know what I mean? And I asked him, I'm like, and I was talking about like the North American Super Slam. I said, with the North American Super Slam, like with Pope and Young, obviously it's a record book of the animal. But have you guys ever thought about getting more involved like with the Super Slam part? You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of guys that are going out there and shooting trying to hunt and harvest the 29 based around the North American big game animals that Pope and Young recognizes.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't know, I must have just struck a nerve with her because she was like not happy. She was like, well, we're a record book to honor the animal. I'm like, okay. And I said, well, I understand that, but like there's somebody that harvested the animal, like that he's the one that wanted to be in the book. You know what I mean? And she's like, well, it's about the animal, not about the hunter. And I'm like, but the organization is called Pope and Young. It's not called bear and deer. You know what I mean? Like moose and elk. Like it's called Pope and Young. It's based around two guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, well, hold on a second. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I feel like part of what happened along the way is I think they kind of missed that opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where I feel like there should be a way that we can honor the animal, but there's also something to be said about the person that harvested the animal.
Yeah.
Do you follow me? But this all comes back to me to the very beginning of what I said, where at the end of the day, do what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And for me,
Yep.
we've talked about this before. I could give two diddlies
Yep.
what anybody thinks. For me, hunting is such a personal thing, and do what you really want to do. And if that's shooting the Big 10 or the Super 25 or the North American Super Slam or the Grand Slam of Sheep, or if you want to go out and hunt aoudad or ibex or alligators, you know what I mean? Like there's all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
Just do what you want to do. But I do think that there's just kind of like some disconnect.
Yeah, for sure.
Nowadays with record books. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Yeah. It's like a way bigger topic. And again, I'm sorry if I'm like poo-pooing on anybody. That's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to be honest.
Yeah.
I think what Pope and Young does is awesome, and I think it's important. I think what they all do is important. I just feel like I feel like as a hunter, like we're just like asking ourselves, I was like, well, why isn't it as popular? Like, why don't people do it? Like, why aren't they entering stuff in? Like, why am I not? Why, and there's a younger generation than us, like our kids that don't know a thing about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And how do we
Don't
get
even
them?
know.
Yeah. How do we get them interested?
Yeah. Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Super interesting topic.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, and I've said this before, I feel like the way that Pope and Young tries to, and all these organizations try to like get back in it or get back more in like top of mind awareness with people is, I've said this for years. I wish that Pope and Young would go to all the shows that are going on in the wintertime and have the world record sheep, the world record elk, the world record whitetail,
Yeah.
the world record mule deer,
Right.
and just have replicas there. Have them set up on a stand and have a sign that says, touch me.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah.
And have little kids that can stand there, here, try to hold up those bighorn sheep horns and be like, "Ooh,"
Yeah.
you know, and literally stand inside of an elk rack that's 6 feet tall,
Yeah.
pretty near, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
you know, in a whitetail that guys are going, holy crapper.
Right. Yeah.
I remember seeing this in North American whitetail. I remember seeing this on here, like, whoa.
Yeah. No
And
doubt.
touching it and being like, this is how big it is.
Yeah.
And get that excitement and be like, and that's the Pope and Young #1.
Yeah, for sure.
That's, to me, I feel like a step in the right direction. You know, that to me gives me goosebumps. So I go, heck yeah, dude. I think about how impactful that would be for my little boy Jet. Huh, he would be all over it.
Yeah.
He'd be all over it. What's Pope and Young?
Right.
Right? What is that? Yeah, man, you get your name in the record book. But that's kind of gone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a crazy thing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about some other animals. Let's talk about some kind of, well, I feel like we've already gone pretty obscure,
Yeah.
but there's the one that couple that I wanted to get to on the deer side of things.
Yep.
Okay. So obviously everybody knows whitetails, mule deer. That seems pretty obvious. Coos deer, just so we talk about Coos deer for a sec. Coos deer down in Arizona, right? They're in Mexico as well. They're like a little itty bitty whitetail.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Those can be pretty huntable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can just go down there and do that. That's a pretty cool thing to try. You can go down there during what would be the kind of the beginning of the winter, or the getting to be the winter, right around the New Year, December, and go down there and try to hunt them, or January, whenever it is, and hunt them during the rut. It's pretty killer to do that. That's a pretty cool thing to do with a bow. And then, like you said, there's Columbia blacktail and there's Sitka blacktail. Columbia blacktail are indigenous to like Northern California. But the other ones that a lot of people don't know about, and there's just a lot less of them out there, but you can still go find them, is a Columbia whitetail. Okay. Which is in the Northwest,
Yep.
Washington, Oregon. You know what I mean? Columbia whitetail. That's kind of a cool one. And then I actually just had a conversation about this the other day. You go to Maryland and you could go, and I'm sorry, I don't know how you say it. Everybody says it different. I've heard it said both ways. The Sika or Sika deer, in Maryland.
Yeah.
Those are not indigenous to the United States.
Yeah.
But they were brought here. That's another one that would be pretty cool to hunt. It looks like almost like if like a deer and an elk had a baby. You know,
Yeah.
they live in the swamps, and sounds like they're super skitty as well.
Right.
Actually, we were talking to
Rye Ludwig.
Rye, who's actually from Maryland.
Yep.
He got me all fired up about that.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that would be fun to do. And I've been thinking about that for a long time, just because we go to Harrisburg.
Yeah, exactly.
And we see guys that come there and that talk a lot about that.
For sure.
So that Sika deer is kind of something that looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know?
Yep.
So yeah, like you said, there's other whitetail species out there too. Or not whitetail species, other deer species that are here. And there's probably other ones we're not even talking about. But those are the ones that you could get out there and have some fun with those too.
Yeah, no doubt. For sure.
I'll tell you what, the most obscure one that you're never going to even think that I would say, which it doesn't really interest me, but I could see why it would be really kind of a neat, unique experience. Walrus. Yeah, dude. In the Arctic Circle. Go up there and hunt a walrus.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. Have you ever seen like a walrus not in the water? Yeah. They are really big.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their tusks, dude. Like, yeah, man. Hunting in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to do a fun YouTube search, just type in walrus hunting Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. You'll go down a rabbit hole.
Unreal.
Yeah. Yeah. Walrus hunting. So that'd be another thing that'd be pretty wild.
Yeah.
Walrus mounts are pretty bizarre looking too.
I bet.
They do them like as a big shoulder mount.
Oh, cool.
Tuskers hanging down.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Or you see like just the tusks, like they'll have them like, or they'll just have the skull and the tusk sticking down.
Mm-hmm.
Looks pretty killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, walrus. Who would have thought? What else do I got on here? I'll tell you what. That's the one that I just kind of barely mentioned. But if you're looking for something that is kind of off the wall, that you want to do with kids, the two that come to mind for me are not recognized at all. North American big game animals, pigs and alligators.
Mm-hmm.
Every kid thinks an alligator looks cool.
Right.
We go to the Harrisburg show every year, and there's an outfitter in that room, in the outfitter room, that sells alligator hunts.
Yeah.
And he's got all these alligator mounts. He's got one that's like, looks like it's coming out of the water and like a coffee table. He's got them rugged. He's got them full size, all these alligators. And the cool thing about that is there's little alligators and there's big alligators. Well, guess what? To my 8-year-old, an 8-foot alligator looks pretty dang big.
Right.
If you're looking for a trophy alligator, you're probably looking for a 10, 11, 12 footer.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yep.
But an 8-foot alligator to him that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool. So, and you can go down to Florida, you go lots of places and do a really, really cool but safe alligator hunt.
Yeah.
With outfitters that know what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And have an opportunity. You could bow fish for them, right? You could shoot them with a bow and then hit them with a bang stick, you know what I mean? Like there's lots of different ways that you can do it.
For sure.
And there's tons of them around. They ain't going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, alligator would be a really fun thing. I've really thought about doing that with jet.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing across all the southern states is pigs.
Yeah.
Jeez, oh, Pete's. I mean, just Texas alone, how many pigs are there? Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi. There's pigs. The Carolinas. Go hunt some pigs. Man, there's places you could go night hunting. You could hunt them during the day. You could hunt them over bait. You could spot and stalk them. There's all sorts of cool things that you could do.
Yeah.
And the best part is they taste really good.
Right. Yep.
You know, if you're looking to try to get kids into a way that you can go, hey, let's do something where we're going to hunt it, but we're going to harvest it, but we're going to eat it. What a great way.
Yeah.
A pig.
Yeah.
You know, they can put 2 and 2 together with that.
Yep.
You know, I never really had a chance to do any pig hunting. And then I was a videographer and had a chance then. And it was really, really fun. I was really blown away by how much fun it is.
Yeah.
And like I said, talking to Scott and Buddy, you would hear those guys, and a lot of Texas guys would tell you, you know, those pigs, they can be really, really tricky. They can, you know, you think, oh, the feeder goes off and they just walk right in. Not so much.
No.
You know, those big boars, they are smart.
Yeah.
They are super smart.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're all sitting here because of a pig hunt with Scott and Buddy. How many couple decades ago,
true.
right? That's why we're sitting here right now. Is
Yep.
they hunted with an Ozonics, what was an Ozo machine hooked up to a car battery.
Yeah.
Like they didn't light themselves on fire, you know, with the spark in the, you know, the car battery on the unit trying to get it going and, you know, electrocute themselves. But here we are, you know, because of a pig hunt, you know what I mean?
No doubt.
So, yeah, I would say go try to do a pig hunt. That's another one that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, moral of the story from today's episode is there is a lot of cool stuff out there.
Yep.
Like I said, if you can't tell, I really like North American big game animals.
Yeah.
The one that I'm excited to hunt is the next one.
Yep.
And hopefully maybe this episode made you think about the next one just a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the thing to realize is there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, no doubt.
And if whitetails is your trip, that's perfect.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe you listen and you go, you know what? I'm gonna really look into a Sika hunt, a Sika deer hunt. I'm gonna do Alaska. I'm gonna go do a moose hunt.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there. I would definitely just say, don't be afraid to take the first step. That's right where it all starts. You know what I mean? So, all right. Well, another episode in the books. That's it.
See you next week.
Stay classy. Stay classy.